There is a moment in Kentaro Miura's Berserk that does not just break the story. It breaks you. The Eclipse. Griffith, the charismatic leader of the Band of the Hawk, the man who Guts admired more than anyone, sacrifices every single one of his loyal comrades to become a demon god. He does not hesitate. He does not look back. And Guts, the man who once found his purpose by Griffith's side, watches helplessly as everyone he loves is devoured. This is not just a plot twist. It is a philosophical event. And the relationship between Guts and Griffith maps almost perfectly onto one of the most famous intellectual betrayals in history. The relationship between Friedrich Nietzsche and Richard Wagner. Nietzsche, in his early years, worshipped Wagner. In his first major work, The Birth of Tragedy, Nietzsche presented Wagner as the rebirth of Greek tragedy, the savior of art itself. He spent hours at Wagner's home. He wrote letters overflowing with admiration. Wagner was his Griffith, his dream made flesh. But Nietzsche eventually broke away. He could no longer stomach Wagner's nationalism, his Christianity, his ego. In the case of Wagner and Nietzsche contra Wagner, he tears his former idol apart. And just like Guts after the Eclipse, Nietzsche emerged from the wreckage of his devotion as a different man. Stronger, clearer, alone. Griffith is what Nietzsche would call the Ubermensch. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche describes the Overman as one who creates his own values, who transcends the slave morality of the masses, who is willing to destroy the old to build the new. Griffith does exactly this. He sacrifices his humanity, his friends, his love, all for the sake of his dream. He stands beyond good and evil, just as Nietzsche describes in his book of the same name. For Griffith, morality is simply an obstacle between him and his ambition. And in his world, it works. He becomes femto. He gains godlike power. He builds his kingdom. Nietzsche would recognize him immediately, but Nietzsche also warned about this. The Ubermensch does not seek power for its own sake. The will to power is not the will to dominate. It is the will to overcome oneself, to create, to give meaning. Griffith stops overcoming himself the moment he uses the behelit. He takes a shortcut. And shortcuts, in Nietzsche's philosophy, are the opposite of greatness. Greatness is earned through suffering, through struggle, through becoming. Griffith skips the becoming and reaches for the crown directly. That is not the Overman. That is a tyrant with a god complex. Guts, on the other hand, is something else entirely. Guts is the absurd hero that Albert Camus describes in the myth of Sisyphus. Sisyphus was condemned to push a boulder up a hill only to watch it roll back down for eternity. Camus concludes that we must imagine Sisyphus happy. Why? Because Sisyphus knows his fate and embraces it. He finds meaning not in the destination but in the act itself. The struggle toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. Guts lives this philosophy. After the Eclipse, his life becomes an endless battle against demons, against fate, against the God hand itself. He will never win. He knows this. The odds are literally impossible. But he fights anyway. Not because he believes he will defeat Griffith. Not because he thinks justice will prevail. But because the struggle itself is the point. Every swing of the Dragon Slayer is a declaration. I am still here. I am still fighting. You have not broken me. This is the absurd hero in its purest form. Camus would see Guts and recognize a kindred spirit. The hatred Guts feels for Griffith is not the opposite of meaning. It is what gives him meaning. It is his boulder. And he pushes it every day. The real-world parallel between Nietzsche and Wagner mirrors this perfectly. Nietzsche, like Guts, had to destroy his idol to become himself. In Ecce Homo, his autobiographical work, Nietzsche writes that Wagner was the great benefactor of his life, but also that he had to overcome him. He writes that one repays a teacher badly if one always remains nothing but a pupil. This is Guts. He began as Griffith's sword, his tool, his follower. But to become who he truly was, he had to break free. The Eclipse forced that break in the most horrific way imaginable. But the philosophical truth remains the same. You cannot become yourself while living in someone else's shadow. So who was right? Griffith, who sacrificed everything for his dream and won? Or Guts, who lost everything and kept fighting anyway? Nietzsche would not give a simple answer. He would say that both men represent different aspects of the human condition. Griffith is the will to power untethered from compassion, the ambition that devours everything in its path. He is magnificent and monstrous in equal measure. Guts is the will to endure, the refusal to surrender to meaninglessness. He is broken and beautiful and terrifying all at once. Camus would side with Guts. In The Rebel, Camus argues that true rebellion is not about destruction. It is about saying no to injustice while affirming the value of life itself. Griffith destroys. Guts affirms. Even in his rage, even in his hatred, Guts never stops protecting the people he cares about. Casca, his new companions, the innocent. Griffith cannot say the same. Perhaps the deepest lesson of Berserk is that the line between the Overman and the monster is thinner than we want to believe. Griffith crossed it. Guts walks along it every day, and Miura, through his art, asks us which side we would choose.